Hey there, YouTube and world. How are you all doing? I hope you all are doing fantastic. Oh yeah, I'm doing fantastic here. So today, I have yet another comic book review. Yep, and it's a Tintin comic book review, as usual, for the computer channel. So, what I've got here is a Tintin comic book that came all the way from Sweden. So this is the first Tintin comic book that arrived here in the United States to my place from Sweden, all the way from Sweden. So I guess this is the bookstore that had this comic book that I wanted. I'm pretty sure I will not be pronouncing it correctly, but if it's in English, it says Smekel Books. Yeah, alright. So, okay, so why did this comic book arrive all the way from Sweden? Because this is a very special Tintin comic book. It's a very rare Tintin comic book. It's very hard to find this Tintin comic book here in the United States, also in Canada, and some parts of the world. But it's very easy to get it in Europe or the European nations. Alright, so let's open it up. Oh yeah, by the way, this is Professor Calculus over here. Okay, so let's hope this opens up easily, because the Amazon book packet don't open up that easy. Alright, so this is not opening up that easy, but still it's not that hard. I think I got it. Alright, so here it is, the unveiling of the very rare Tintin comic book. Ta-da! Yep, it's Tintin and the Lake of Sharks. Oh, cool. This is a hardcover. When I was ordering it, I didn't know this was a hardcover. So what makes this Tintin comic book so special? Well, first of all, if you have a look at a regular Tintin comic book, and this is actually the King Otto's Scepter, The Adventures of Tintin, and if you turn it, you'll see all the adventures lined up, right? All the comic books, except for this comic book. It's not here. You can't find this comic book in the lineup. The reason for that being is this comic book is the only Tintin comic book that was published based on animation or based on an animated cartoon titled Tintin and the Lake of Sharks, but it was not drawn by Hergé. All the other Tintin comic book and all the other Tintin comic stories were written and drawn by Hergé, alright, the creator of Tintin. But this comic book and this animated series was not drawn by Hergé. So that's the only unique thing about this comic, and that's why it's so rare to find this comic book. I had this when I was a kid, because when I was a kid 20 or 30 years ago, Tintin comic book actually used to have this comic book here at the end. The Lake of Shark would be listed here. This cover would be actually here, placed here. Instead of Tintin and the Alpha Art, it will be Lake of Sharks. I don't know what happened, but after 20, 25 years or 30 years, it's no longer listed behind the regular Tintin comic book. So as you can see from the artwork, this is not a regular Tintin comic book artwork, because this was not drawn by Hergé, but it is the same line drawing style of Hergé that was followed and drawn here in this animation series. And these are actually clips from the animation itself, so that's why it looks weird compared to the original Tintin comic book drawing. So yeah, it's quite different. This is more like, it looks like a movie, like an animation series, but over here it looks like a comic book So this is a comic book. This is also a comic book, but it was actually, made from the pictures taken from the animation or the animated series. But this comic book is really, really very, very interesting. When I was a kid, I read it and I really, really liked it. Some people don't like it just because it wasn't drawn by Hergé, and I don't think that's very. That's a smart thing to do. I mean, discriminate comic books according to the writer or the creator, as long as the drawing, as long as the comic book story or the storyline is interesting. I still think a comic book is good. So this comic book has a very good, nice drawing style that follows the Hergé's drawing style, line drawing pattern, and also it has a very good story. That's what makes this comic book a very good comic book. All right, I don't mind Hergé didn't draw this, but Hergé did supervise this entire animation. So he was still on the board of the animators, and he was overseeing everything, overseeing all the drawing, overseeing all the storyboard and everything, and he was actually editing them. So in other words, Hergé's name is not here on the cover, but Hergé supervised it. So that's why this is still original. So this is still in line with all the other Hergé work. And this comic book is very rare. So I'm very, very happy to have it finally. I did not have this comic book in my collection, and I suddenly found out that Google Play Movies added Tintin and the Lake of Sharks animated series recently. So I purchased it and I watched it. I got hooked to it, so I had to get the comic book. I had to have the comic book. So yeah, so this comic book is super, super interesting as usual, like all of the Tintin comic book, and the artwork is really, really fantastic. Really, really, really fantastic, man. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this review on Tintin and the Lake of Sharks, and I hope you'll be watching the animated series. And I hope if you like the animated series, you'll get this Tintin comic for your collection, Tintin comic book collection. All right, stay cool, everybody, and stay fantastic. Oh yeah. Tintin and the Lake of Sharks is a 1972 animated film based on the adventures of Tintin, directed by Raymond Leblanc. It was not written by Hergé, who merely supervised it, but by a Belgian comic creator named Greg Michel Rayner, a friend of Hergé. It was later adapted into a comic book with still images from the film used as illustrations. So Tintin and the Lake of Sharks is only comic book that was not written or drawn by Hergé. In Tintin and the Lake of Sharks, Tintin and his friends are holidaying in Seldavia with Professor Calculus, who actually has invented an amazing new duplicating machine. But a series of strange occurrences makes Tintin suspicious. Who is the mysterious King Shark, and what does he want with Calculus machine? Tintin and the Lake of Sharks, available on Google Play.